Welcome back to the Vol Talk podcast. Today, I'm joined with special guest Dakota. I'm usually joined with my brother Blake. He is currently MIA. No, he is accounted for. However, he was a game time decision and cannot make it today. So I'm hosting. I've got hosting roles. And if you're new to the podcast, haven't watched way back last season, Dakota actually joined us for a few episodes, especially during the playoffs. During our playoff run, he was part of our live shows, and we are joined once again by him. So, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Doing good, man. I really appreciate being back on here. Yeah, unfortunate Blake couldn't be here today, but happy to be back on here. It's a very different show than it was the last time I was here, man. So really excited to be on here and what you all have built. So excited to talk Vol football. I haven't done that in a bit. So
Yeah, I'm excited as well. I mean, we're right there to the season, man. That's what I'm most excited about. I'm so excited to finally get into the season. But I got to start by thanking everyone for the recent support on our videos. It's been absolutely insane. I mean, we got 70 subscribers since our last live stream. It's been a wild ride, man, and I really appreciate the support on all the clips and the videos, the live streams, everybody watching. So thank you all for the support. Blake also wants me to tell you all thank you from him as well, and he will be back. He is in the chat already. Let's go. Uh, he says basically Blake even has the hat. Go Vols. What's up, Blake? Good to see you in the chat, man. And we got a lot to talk about today, dude. We got a ton to talk about today. On the docket, we have Boo being back. We got to cover that. Recruiting, QB battle, betting lines, and Vols back in the playoffs, man. We'll talk a little playoff scenarios and things like that. Early playoff scenarios, obviously, but it's going to be a fun show. But speaking of support, if y'all could please like and subscribe, those things really help our channel, especially when we're still growing, like right before the season. Obviously, the subs have been going nuts, and it's really helped us grow this channel. So please like and subscribe to the channel. We also have Spotify. If you can only listen, if you have long rides to work and whatnot, please follow us on Spotify. That will be linked in the description below. But anyways, man, let's get into it. So Boo is back. Okay. Last live stream, Blake and I kind of discussed how, Boo was away from the team, and it was honestly a question mark whether he would be on the team in 2025. Thankfully, he is back. He's back with the team. So just kind of, we haven't heard your thoughts, Dakota, on it. So what's your thoughts on the situation and him being back in camp?
yeah, it's good to see him back, like in a limited capacity where it's kind of like having to earn the team's trust back. He was practicing without his helmet and was kind of on his own during some team activities. Overall thoughts on it, not to, blasphemy to quote an Alabama coach, but like these types of things, the rat poison thing is what I think about. And I'm glad that it's happening before the season starts, right? Because like we've seen our seasons get derailed in the past, and like 2017 when we had the Jalen Hurds stuff and other things going on that kind of derailed what was looking to be a really promising season, top 10. And then in 2022, the most recent one that really hurt, Connor Stallions may have played a role in that as well, but the Jeremy Banks stuff leading into the South Carolina game derailed the season. So my mind just focuses on that aspect of it all and how much of a distraction it can be to the football team when you have things that are off the field related, well, on the field partially related, but that carries over beyond that, right? And it impacts the locker room, it impacts social media, the fans, everybody becoming involved. So glad that we've made it past it, and very glad that it happened in camp rather than during the season. So it seems like Heupel and the staff were able to resolve it rather quickly. And fortunately, he's still here, right? Because you mentioned it before that Boo, not to the level of Travis Hunter, right? But like he could be a really pivotal piece to this team and this program for the next few years, with his ability to play both sides of the ball. So I'm glad they were able to get it resolved so we could keep a guy like that on the team, earn the trust back of his teammates, and he can make an impact for us this fall.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge, man. I mean, he's going to be one of the best players on our defense. He was really good as a true freshman. And one more year in college football, one more year of development, he'll get even better. And I agree with you ultimately about just some fans on Twitter in particular are just go too far with stuff and make up
Yeah.
things. And we also talked about last week about how some people stalk social media and stuff like some of the things that Vols fans do are weird and straight up hateful sometimes. But you're right. It was resolved before the season started, which is fantastic. We got one of our best young pieces back in camp. He is being brought along slowly. And so they're kind of making him earn the trust back of his
Mhm.
teammates, which, that's totally fair because Boo made a mistake, but it's okay because he's a young guy and that happens sometimes and it's okay. We can move on from it. And I'm happy to move on from it as a fan base as well. And so yeah, I think he's gonna make a huge impact this season. So yeah, that's really good. He's back. Boo is
Who is
back.
back?
Boo is back, man. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't have much more to say other than, I think it's interesting because if you look at, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but it seems like we might need him at receiver at some point this year, dude, with how little the receiver depth is right now on this team and some injuries. So yeah, like Boo could make a huge impact on this team. And that kind of leads us into our recruiting discussion, Dakota, because we've gotten a couple new recruits over the last week or so, 2 4-star athletes, both two-way players. And this kind of goes back into our Travis Hunter conversation about how
Mhm.
his impact on college football, right? He played 2 ways full time. And now you see all these cats out of high school that want like aspire to do the same thing. Which is going to be interesting to see how many of those dudes get those opportunities to actually do it. But yeah, we bring in 2 recruits, Joel Wyatt and Salsi Moa or Moy or God, what is it, Dakota? Moa,
Moa. So Lacey
Moa.
Moa.
See, I got it right the first time, and then I questioned
You did.
myself. But yeah, I mean, we that he's an interesting one. I kind of want to focus on him a
Yeah.
little bit because he was a lock to go to Utah, dude, an absolute lock to go to Utah. Like nobody was even paying attention to him, and then last second we pick him up, which was huge.
Yeah. Yeah. He was almost crystal balled to go straight to Utah, and then at his signing day, pulled out the Tennessee shirt and shocked everybody. Yeah, he's a really interesting one because he's got the size, honestly, relatively similar to Boo's size. 6'1", 190. So definitely has the athleticism and size to play both sides of the ball. And you're right with the Travis Hunter stuff. Like guys have always, because of high school football, right? Like people play both sides of the ball pretty often. But usually when you're going into college, like you're always pigeonholed into one side because that's been the norm. But now with the success Travis Hunter has had, I do think it's about to change that pretty drastically, where guys are going to want to try to play both sides. And it's, to be honest, it'll change even more once we see what type of player Hunter is at the NFL level and what contract he gets. So like recruits coming in that are athletes may want to try to aspire to be that a bit more. But yeah, Moa looks like a guy that could easily play both sides of the ball and specifically anywhere in the secondary at that size. He's going to have the size to play corner or safety. I think he's mainly played safety in high school, but with that size, he could definitely do either.
Yeah, no question about it. And it's going to be interesting because, yeah, I mean, yeah, Joe Wyatt has massive size, 6'4". He'll probably be receiver. But it's going to be interesting to see what these do with these young guys. I'm going to catch up on the chat here.
Yeah.
Dylan is in the chat. He says, I'm glad Blue completed his summer workouts before he started his fall camp. Locker room has seemed to forgive and forget. And yeah, and I think that's how we need to be as a fan base, dude, because at the end of the day, Boo Carter has a chance to be one of the best defensive players in the country or at least in the SEC and on our football team. So as a fan base, we need to forgive and forget. And he made a mistake. He owned up to it and he's doing all the necessary things. He's not pouting about having to be like eased back into practice and things like that. So I love to see that. And then Vols all day. I think you're new to the chat, so I appreciate you joining Vols all day. He says, I bet Joey's going to light it up in the fall. I sure hope so, man. Like we're obviously Vols fans and we want to see Aguilar light it up. Joey is, I think, maybe a hooker 2.0, a Sakert getting ready to explode. I would love to, and yeah, we're going to get into Aguilar in the QB battle later, but it's interesting, man, because nobody would have predicted Hendon Hooker in 2022. It's just, no one saw that coming, whatsoever. And then he also brings up Colton Hood and he says he's going to be a surprise. We're going to get into Colton Hood a little bit later. We also got a
Hmm.
clip of Colton
Hmm.
Hood, and we'll discuss that. I'm sure y'all have seen that going around social media. And then Dylan brings up Kelsey Pope, and yeah, there has been issues with Kelsey Pope in the past. He can recruit though. There's no question about that. I mean, we're on recruiting right now, so we'll discuss this right now. It seems like we're still in the Keys conversation. I question it because we get these two new 4-star athletes that can play receiver. So I wonder if that Keys money kind of last minute flipped to the two athletes. But I mean, it seems like we're right there in that Keys conversation. And if he can get Keys, then all of a sudden this freshman wide receiver class is going to be the best we've seen in a long time, dude.
For sure. Yeah. And it is a good point on, I feel like we've kind of had a consistency outside of the Hyatt season, though, of just receivers not really playing up to the par we think they could. But on paper going into this year, the receiving core looked pretty interesting, and now that's changing some. So glad to see some recruits coming in that could potentially be impact players much earlier on in their career than was probably expected when the recruiting for them started.
And dude, this, and we saw this last year with Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith. A good receiver can come in and make an impact immediately, dude. They can come in as a true freshman and change an offense. So, and the more shots you take at these guys, the better, in my opinion, especially Keys. If we can somehow land Keys, and all of a sudden this recruiting class is looking phenomenal. Lynn and Ryan joined us in the chat. Chat's going pretty quick, so I'm going to try to keep up. But Lynn and Ryan joining, longtime supporters, really appreciate y'all. Y'all are on like every video that we post, commenting and stuff. So really appreciate Lynn and Ryan in the chat. Also appreciate Blake helping me respond to some of these chatters. Appreciate it, bro. Yeah, Lynn, I'm ready for kickoff as well, dude. I'm ready for kickoff. So yeah. But yeah, recruiting going well. We'll see how the class finishes. We also have a hitter that's gonna commit in a few days. I think he's scheduled like August 12th. It does seem like he's going to Michigan at this point, Dakota. That's what the rumblings are. So it looks like we're going to miss out on him. But hey, me and Blake have said for a while now, dude, if we can get one of hitter or Keys, I think this class comes together really nicely. So hopefully they keep it up, man. But let's get into fall camp because I think that's what people want to talk about and the QB battle. So yeah, it seems like a full-on battle at this point, man. That's what I'll say right off the bat. It really feels like, because me and Blake have been kind of discussing this through the offseason, man, that it kind of seemed like Aguilar was going to be the guy. Like they were going to give Merklinger a chance, but not really. At this point, from what I've seen from camp, it does feel like it's a two-man battle, and it's going to be, like, I would say it's like 50-50 right now. I mean, that's just how I feel about it from what I've seen from clips and like who's getting first team reps and things like that. So what are you seeing from it, dude? Because I haven't got your thoughts on it. And what are your opinions on these quarterbacks?
Yeah, I think one thing that Merklinger I think deserves a ton of credit for is sticking around. It kind of comes back to what Milton did. He knew he was going to probably be backing up Nico going into this season before everything happened. And then when Nico left, it was clear to him, it was made clear to him that they were going to bring in a quarterback to compete with him. And he could have bailed at that point and didn't. So I think it says a lot about Merklinger's, desire to be a part of the program and specifically his competitiveness. I think it's interesting. I'm torn on who I would suspect wins the job. I think it could end up being one of those scenarios where we see both of these guys a good bit this season. And I don't know if that's a good thing, because quarterback battles, there's the side where, the negative in that is if one guy's not separating himself, that could be a problem where you mean that the guys are too equal in a bad way. And then the other side of that is, we just witnessed this in 22 where it almost doesn't really matter who wins the starting job out of the gate because what happens on the field will be the most impactful. And with Hooker and Milton, we saw Milton win the job, right? And then lose it. Hooker takes over and then has the Heisman caliber season he does. Milton comes back and then looks way better than he did in 21. So it's interesting because I want to see the positive in like the QB battle going on, but really at the end of the day, like the practice setting is so hard to draw judgment from. I think abysmal play shows out. But when guys are competing like this, it's tough to say. And then once they get on the field, things are just a different world.
It's a really good point, dude, because we have a practice clip, but when we show this practice clip, we're not going to overreact to this. It's one rep. We're only seeing bits and pieces of practice when we see social media clips. So we really don't know. And we also don't see the intangibles. And we've kind of talked about that in terms
Right.
of Aguilar. But there has been some quotes about Merklinger as well and his intangibles that have come out from Lance Hurd and such that we'll get into. But we don't see them leading the team. We don't see them getting in calls, like who's doing that better. We're really just seeing a couple throws here and there, right? And you can't make a big judgment on that. And I also like your other point, dude, that listen, it's once we get in the game, that's when we really know. Like once they get in a game setting, week 1 against Syracuse, then we'll find out because all the fans right now in the chat, all the Vols fans right now in the chat know, just like you brought up in 2021, they thought Milton was the guy. And can you blame him? I mean, the arm talent, just the
Right.
looks like he looks like he looks like a great practice quarterback. But when he got in the game, he just wasn't as good as Hendon. And we saw that. So they end up making the right decision long term and gave Hendon the job in 22 and the rest of 21. So I am going to catch up on the chat here real quick. Dylan was mentioning Keys earlier and how he's apparently getting paid monthly to stay committed to LSU. That is unbelievable. I haven't heard that. I don't doubt it because we've been coming at him hard and I don't doubt anything in NIL area, right, Dakota? I just don't. That is insane to hear though. And then Vols all day talking about our running back room, which we will get into that because I do want to discuss the running back room after we get done talking about the QB battle here. So I am going to go ahead and show this clip. Dakota, you won't be able to see it live, but you've seen the clip. We're going to react to this a little bit. It just came out today, so I basically set the scene. It's just one throw, and on our cornerback Colton Hood made a great play on that throw. But they blurred out the quarterback who threw it, Dakota. You can't see which quarterback threw the pass because it was a bad throw.
Oh.
It was a bad rep. He underthrew the ball. Whoever it was, he underthrew the ball. And so you can't see who it actually was. Very interesting. I'll go ahead and roll that clip now. Oh, wrong tab. Excuse me. Production team's ruining the live stream here, but here we go. Here's the clip. So, see, you see my mouse, I'm kind of circling the blurred out quarterback there, and I do it again there. So you can see that the quarterback is blurred out in this clip. I will say, I'll play it one more time. Colton Hood makes a great play on the ball.
Yeah,
I'm going to start with the positive because for one, he's right there. He's hanging out right there with Mike Matthews the entire time. Like he's like on top of Mike Matthews. Plus, to me, what stood out in the clip, Dakota, was Colton Hood's ball skills. Like that's a very tough interception to make, dude. That was not an easy catch to make whatsoever.
Yeah, I think that stood out. And honestly, the lack of ball skills from Matthews there in terms of getting back to the ball.
Yeah.
That because you see it's going to be underthrown. I don't know. There wasn't a ton of effort there, but it is really interesting. And I see Dylan in chat saying he thinks it was Joey. I am torn on who I think it is because I think skin complexion wise looks like Joey, but I think height wise and the number looks like double digit from the blur, but it's so hard to tell. It is so hard to tell.
I know. And okay, we got a couple of thoughts on it. So I'll start with kind of where you're going with it. Who is it? Who was the quarterback? When I first saw the clip, I'll be honest, just from what I've seen of Joey Aguilar, what I know of Joey Aguilar, the underthrow, I thought it was Aguilar. I did. I'll be honest. He doesn't have a big time arm. But when I looked at the clip more closely, like you're saying, dude, it looks like double digits. It looks like double digits. So from that angle, I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's Merklinger. But then you look at the tan and you're like, well, man, maybe it's Aguilar. But my biggest takeaway on this clip is the fact that they had to do this. Like the fact that they felt like our social media team, Tennessee Vols football social media team, felt like that they had to blur out the quarterback who made this throw because Vol Twitter is so, I mean, they're toxic. That's sometimes Vol Twitter can be toxic. That's just the reality, dude. It can be. And so they felt the need to blur out the quarterback, dude. And I don't feel good about that.
It makes me wonder if they actually weighed like the pros and cons of this, because you're doing it for the sake of the fan base, right? To try to minimize the backlash from the fans, or like, them calling out whichever quarterback it was, saying that it was a terrible throw. But what you open the door for is getting roasted by everybody else. And that's kind of what we're seeing happen, where now like everybody else on Twitter has seen the clip and now they're posting the blurred image. So like
Yeah.
now it's just a bigger talking point than it would have even been in totality had you just let the person be shown. And it does make me wonder, like, was there direction to the social media team to do that? Or did they just go on their own and say like, oh man, let's blur them. Let's be safe here. That's the interesting part to me is like, is there directive to try to limit the fans talking about these quarterbacks or what? But I think the negative of now opening up Twitter in its totality for everybody else, I think it's almost worse.
And it is worse. I agree. I think it backfired big time. It's funny, and we get to talk about it on Vol Talk, and guys, the chat's popping off. I'm gonna try to keep up with the chat. Blake's doing the Lord's work in the chat by keeping up with it. So I'm gonna read a couple things in the chat. Thank you, Scooby, for joining us. Apparently a Georgia fan, but appreciate the engagement, brother. Got Dylan in the chat. Our fans are rabid and for better or for worse, and we're guilty of eating our own alive. Exactly. That's exactly why it feels like they did this, right? Because like, listen, Jarrett Garantano, when he was here, right? He got flamed so much, dude. He got flamed so much. And he was not a good quarterback. Let's just be honest about that. He was not a good quarterback, but it was to the point to where like the fan base straight up just hated him. And like he's now kind of gotten back into the community, the Vol community, and it's kind of like, kind of lent his own hand, and it seems like it's been mended, but there's still some people after all these years on Twitter today that bring up his play. It's like, okay, that's a little weird, because it's like we're past that, right? We're so many years past that. We're past the Pruitt era and the Butch era, and we want to move on as a fan base. So it's kind of weird when the guy is like trying to like claim the Vols and be a VFL, and then people still hate on his play. But that's to Dylan's point, right? We do have a rabid fan base, especially on Twitter. And I recommend spending as few amount of time on Twitter as possible, because it's just toxic in general. VFL is asking, I'm just reading the chat here as it goes. VFL is asking an update on Boo. We actually talked about Boo a little bit in the beginning of the video. He is back. He is back at practice, at fall camp. And he's kind of being brought back slowly, right? Like he at first was just in his jersey, and then he was in his helmet, and now he's in his shoulder pads and helmet. But yes, like Dylan says in the chat, he's back and he is participating in practice, which is a great thing, right? Like we're moving past it. The Boo stuff is behind us, kind of like I'm bringing up with Garantano here. Put it behind you. Like now let's be positive, and let's hope Boo has a great season, because he's going to be a big part of our success. Just real quick while everyone's watching, I mean, the chat's going. I've literally never seen a chat like this. It's unbelievable. Thank you all so much for watching. For one, thank you so much for the support on the recent videos. I really can't tell y'all how much it means. And if y'all could like it while you're here and subscribe, if you're new to the channel, we just hit 300, but then we surged past 300 and got to 320. So really appreciate y'all watching and supporting the channel. But yeah, more camp updates. Yeah, dude, I'm with you. Like it's tough to know who's ahead in this QB battle. And going back to the clip, it's like again, I'm not going to overreact to the throw. But it wasn't a good throw. It wasn't. Let's just be honest. It was not a good throw whatsoever. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you have any, do you think there's a certain guy that's ahead right now from what you've seen from the clips? I will say there was another clip of Aguilar throwing some solid throws that like 3 or 4 were dropped in a row. I don't know if you saw that clip going around, Dakota, but yeah, I mean, do you have any idea who you think's ahead right now, Dakota?
Yeah, I want to touch, briefly on the point that, Dylan brought up that you were touching on with the JG stuff, because I do think at the end of the day, that's definitely why they did that. They blurred because, and I was never a Jarrett Garantano fan. He's an interesting talking point for multiple reasons right now because of that. Because one, he was a guy for the longest time that got hyped up, even to his very early days at like the end of Dobbs' time, of like, this guy's looking incredible in practice, right? Like that was one of the things that got talked about him all the time, which kind of comes back to my point on like, I don't want to ignore like training camp and everything because it matters, but a lot of the times the way the guys play in practice is just not how they play on the field. And I think Jared Garantano was a good example of that because we heard it all the time how this guy looks incredible and everything. And then the hate he got, it's like obviously I was never rooting. I was never like a Jared Garantano fan, like believing that this guy was going to lead us anywhere. But I think one thing that's a bigger issue just beyond our fan base, but in football right now, is like separating the player on the field from the person. And I think that's a problem where like you attack them as a human. And like Jared Garantano has been nothing but appreciative and loving to the university, to the fans, to everybody. So it was really tough to see like, that last game he had where he got emotional, right? Like at the end of his time here where all of that took a toll on him of dealing with fans that were ridiculous. So that's kind of a talking point on, you can dislike how they play football, but end it there, right? Like don't carry that over into who they are as a person and what they do. That's ridiculous. But back to the QB battle, it's tough. A part of me always wants to lean towards somebody who has experience in a system over somebody that doesn't. And that's where I think Merklinger gets the edge for me, is that he has a year of this offense under Heupel, under Hausel, and I think that matters a lot. He's also been around the players a bit more. Probably didn't he may have actually gotten some reps last year, to be honest, with like Mike Matthews because he wasn't running with the ones. But Aguilar brings a different aspect. He's like, I don't want to say Jameis-like, but he's got that kind of boomer bust in his game where he's not afraid to sling it. And like that could be really rewarding in this offense where if the windows are open, you take advantage of it and you air it out. And then his athleticism adds that extra layer that Merklinger doesn't quite have as much that you like to see. So it's tough for me. I think my gut would lean Merklinger ends up winning it, but I suspect I would not be shocked if we see both of them play against Syracuse. Like if at the end of the day, and I know most fans, and I don't like this, like you can't make a true definitive decision, but you do a 2 QB system, and other teams have done that. Florida did at Michigan, and I could see where going into the Syracuse game, it's like a drive-by-drive basis almost.
Especially if it's really close after camp, dude. Like if it's like it's one of those things where it's like, and you said that could be a bad thing, but it could also be a good thing if they're both showing like, man, they could both possibly take over and be good in this offense. But you do want to see, I mean, ultimately you do want to see a definitive winner in the QB battle. Right. You bring up some good points about Aguilar. I will say though, it feels like Aguilar will raise the ceiling of the offense to me, because we see that clip of Nico missing all these wide open throws, right? And a lot of them were overthrown. That was his big problem. That was Joe Milton's problem, overthrows here. Aguilar won't really have that problem. I mean, not with his arm. True. And I think he hits those throws, right? Like if you look at his PFF data, and some of our newer listeners might not care about PFF at all. I use it. I think some of their data is interesting. They have what's called big time throws, which are just the best throws in football, right? The tight window throws, the deep balls, things of that nature. He has a very high big time throw percentage. Now he does have the turnover worthy throw percentage as well. But I think with that big time throw percentage, dude, it just again raises the ceiling of the offense. I just don't see any more scoreless first halves in our future with Aguilar under center. But to your point with Merklinger, I think from the little clips I've seen on socials, which again, I'm not going to overreact to it, Merklinger looks really good. And if you look at the thumbnail in our video, Dakota, it shows all three of the quarterbacks. Shout out to Blake for the thumbnail. Another fire thumbnail from Blake. And I will try to get to chat at some point here. But if you look at all three of the guys side by side, like Merklinger just looks like a college quarterback. Like McIntyre, like a lot of people are bringing up McIntyre, how he's possible to start as well. He's just not big enough yet. He's just, you can tell a visible difference between him and the other two guys. And you can just tell that they're just more developed, like their bodies are just more developed. But McIntyre could be great at some point down the road. But yeah, man, do you have any more thoughts on the QBs in particular?
Yeah, I think it's funny because Vol Twitter will do anything, but like one of the comparisons that's been funny to me is Baker with Joey Aguilar wearing number 6. Their size is pretty similar. And he does not have an arm like Baker does, but
not at all.
You bring up a very good point with like the deep ball stuff though, is that at the very least, he's going to give him a chance to catch it. Because if you overthrow them by 10 yards, that's probably the worst case. Like, I'm fine if you throw a pick every once in a while because you gave a guy a catchable ball. Like you give them a chance to make a play on one of those deep balls. And Nico just never did that. I will say never, but he didn't do that very often. One thing I think that will be definitively, regardless of who is at quarterback, one thing I think we can count on is the leadership quality there. I think there was a quote this week from Lance Hurd, who said that with Merklinger specifically, that he referred to him as just being a born leader, and that he acts like he's like a 4 or 5 year vet. And it's like that's the type of thing you want to hear. And you guys have touched on the Kitzelman stuff and like the other players who've made it very clear that Nico lacked that. Mm-hmm. He just lacked that. And it doesn't matter how good you are, if you aren't there to help lift up the guys around you, it's going to impact the overall play of the team. So I think at the very least, the positive aspect in this to me is that either of these guys should at least have that going for them. They will be a leader. They will help lift the team up. I don't know if I could even make a statement on who I think will win the battle. My gut honestly just said I think we see both of them against Syracuse. But if one of them was to set themselves apart, I think that would be the best case scenario rather than kind of being in this slight purgatory-esque feel of like where do we go? And somebody in chat brought up a good point, about like, why would Aguilar come here and waste his senior year? And it's like, it may have been his goal to win that job, or maybe think he was going to, but Merklinger is still here.
He also didn't have many options. That's the issue.
True.
He was at UCLA, right? And then he got basically booted to the side because of the Nico situation. And there was there was no other places to go. There's not many starting options available. And listen, Aguilar is going. We're not saying Aguilar has a real chance to win the job. I wouldn't listen at this point. I wouldn't be shocked of either one of them won it, or what you're saying, both of them play week 1. I think they would definitely both play week 1 if we didn't have Syracuse. Like if it was Chattanooga again week 1 or ETSU like we played this year. Yeah, they would both be playing week 1. I do have to shout out the chat here. Ty's new to the chat. Thank you, Ty. You're bringing a great discussion to the chat. Talking about how Hennon was bad in practice and Joe Milton won the job over him when he comes in and has a season. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what we're talking about. Like practice is not everything, people. The game matters, and the game matters. And we haven't really. That's what's interesting about Merklinger, dude. Before we get off the QBs real quick, that's what's interesting about Merklinger. It's like we don't know if he's a gamer or not. We really don't. Like we haven't seen him in the game in high pressure situations.
No.
And he could just be that kind of guy. Aguilar, we have seen at App State, but this will be the best talent he's ever had around him. So it's a little bit different. But yeah, and then the chat just keeps going. It's hard to read it all, but thank you all so much for joining us. And again, thanks Blake for keeping up and responding to people in the chat.
I'm going to shout out Vols all day for the because Blake responded to the compilation of Nico's overthrows is definitely
it's bad,
worth noting in this conversation.
Yeah. It is. And then VFL just says, I just think Heupel needs to sit Merklinger down and just tell him they just be ready. I think that's a good thing. That brings up another interesting conversation that me and you haven't had, Dakota, is that that's why competition is so good. Like, because they're both prepping like they're the starter. So a lot like Joe Milton and Hendon Hooker did in 2021. So whoever loses the job, quote unquote, they will be ready, right? When their opportunity comes, whether it's, God forbid through injury or just poor play from the other guy, then they're going to be ready no matter what, because they're basically both QB1 right now in practice and splitting those reps. So that's a really good point.
It is.
Blake's trying to find his missing bag and keep up with chat.
Dude, good luck.
Shout out to Blake, dude, doing the Lord's work in chat, and good luck with the bag. And yeah, again, appreciate everyone joining us. So but yeah, I mean the QB battle, it's definitely heating up, dude. It's interesting to see how this plays out, man. We got to keep covering it
Yeah.
until they announce a starter. We'll keep a pulse on it. Last thing I'll bring up with the QBs, Lance Hurd had an interesting quote, and you may have brought that up earlier, Dakota. You may have touched on that a little bit earlier, but basically how said both guys seem like great leaders and they're taking care of the offensive linemen, which I love. We're both former offensive linemen, Dakota, and when your
Yeah.
QB takes care of your linemen or at least shows them respect, it's great. That's a great thing to have. And so they
Lynn in
both,
chat, that one got me. That one
yeah,
got me because dad has your back.
yeah. Oh
Uh,
man. But yeah, so yeah, that one threw me off. But yeah, dude. I
Sorry.
mean, Lance Hurd made no, you're good. You're good. I'm, again, it's hard to keep up with chat right now.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah, and
competition. Yeah, my last just that competition piece is very true because we haven't talked about that. Like, it is
yes,
very easy to get complacent when you don't have somebody gunning for your job behind you. And to your point, when you have to prepare like you are the number one guy, because I think other
exactly.
guys can get caught in that mindset of like I'm number 4, what's the point? Or you're the number 2. So I think competition breeds excellence, and I think it is good to have these guys fighting like that. But yeah. That one
Dude,
got
they're
me.
going
Which
crazy in
that
the
got me.
chat, man. Y'all having your conversation of your own. I absolutely love it
Mm.
right now. Um,
And
I
and
think I
last, but really quickly too, on the VFL, on his thing specifically too, is I think everything that's been talked about with Merklinger, I think he could handle that as well. Like that
mhm.
specific scenario of telling him like you're gonna just be ready, take a seat. Like it's obvious that he's been really understanding throughout the entire process, even with Nico. So I think if anybody could handle that conversation, it is Merklinger.
Yes, I agree. And I think that's what Lance Hurd's getting at. It feels like
Right.
everyone in the locker room right now is, again, they're slightly taking shots at the last quarterback, but they're all saying like they almost all seem like, oh my gosh, the wool has been lifted from my eyes. This is what a leader looks like as at the quarterback position, which I talk about all the time, dude. The quarterback, I don't care if you're a freshman. I don't care if you're a true freshman. By the way, true freshman in college football, Jameis Winston, Heisman Trophy, national championship. It's not unheard of. Those things happen all the time. But I don't care if you're a freshman, a senior. I don't care what you are. If you're the starting quarterback of a football team, you have to take a leadership role, a massive leadership
Yes.
role. It's
Mhm.
just the reality of the position. It's just how important it is in sports and in football. So you have to take that role on, and Nico didn't. And it seems like with Lance Hurd's quote about, the quarterback's taking care of the linemen and whatnot, it seems like whoever wins this job, dude, that missing piece is going to be there in 2025, which is massive, dude. It's massive.
Yeah, and it's specifically the most unique leadership aspect in I think all of sport. Like there is not really any other sport. A lot of team ones even where like there is one guy so designated to be the leader, like football. And that's why quarterback is part of the toughest job in sports is because of that
Exactly.
aspect. Outside of what it takes to play the QB position, but how literally everything is on your shoulders. You will be blamed for wins, losses, doesn't matter if your defense gave up things. You are expected to lift the team up. You're expected to lead them into battle. And that is a very unique thing in football compared to other sports. So you have to have a specific mentality. And it kind of looks like Nico doesn't have that. So, good riddance in that aspect.
Yeah, good riddance. Good riddance indeed. A chat continues to pop off. Josh was joining the chat, I believe, for the first time. He says this season has the most unknowns. We're actually going to get into that a little bit later when we talk about playoffs and just some of the betting lines on the season. We have another Georgia fan in the chat. There must be no good Georgia podcast to listen to. We get a lot of Georgia fans in this chat. And listen, the dogs have owned us. We'll own that. They have owned us recently, but look into your history of your head coach and what he was when he played here. 0-4, by the way, never beat the Vols while Kirby played as a player at the University of Georgia. So there's ebbs and flows to these things. There are. That's just how college football is. But yes, thank you for the engagement, Mike, as Blake loves to say. And again, thank you
Love it.
everyone for in the chat that's watching. So yeah, just kind of moving on here, past the quarterbacks, and we'll keep talking about the quarterbacks if y'all want to talk about that in the chat. But there are some other interesting things coming out of camp right now. I think we have to touch on. I mentioned earlier how I wanted to get into the running backs. running back is kind of also in a competition right now, Dakota. We kind of have, and I think VFL or someone in the chat earlier was kind of, or maybe Vols all day was talking about the running back stable that we have right now going on, and just kind of the battle we have in that room. First of all, what are your thoughts on that on the running backs in this upcoming season?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy about it. I think we have three running backs that I feel confident with being on the field, and I'll have very different skill sets, sizes, experience. Star coming in as a transfer, and Deshaun and Peyton being here. I think when Deshaun went in last season, he looked pretty good. I
He
think
did.
everybody
He looked
agreed.
really
In
good,
moments
dude.
when he stepped in and because he got called upon too at times where I don't think he expected to, and when Samson dealt with a little bit of a nagging injury point, or in just situations he had to come in, and I thought he looked fantastic. I don't want to say I've been disappointed in Peyton Lewis, but I feel like I would have expected to see a little bit more out of him. He did get a lot of opportunity last year, but he kind of got hyped up a good bit as a true freshman. So kind of expected to see a little bit more out of him, but now he's a year into it. And it is interesting because our lads has it Bishop Lewis Star, which is
Oh,
very interesting
that
because
is
the college
interesting.
football video game, not that that matters at all, but like there seems like to be a lot of people that think Star is going to be the guy. And he does bring the experience, but I find that pretty intriguing. I suspect it would be Bishop, but I feel confident in having, we were just talking about you don't want competition, you want competition at quarterback, but you want like stability or consistency with one guy. Running back is not that to me. I
Very
want a
true.
stable of guys that you can plug in, keep them fresh, make sure their legs are fresh, and you don't wear and tear them too much. DSamp was on the other end of that, where we asked him to do that, and he could, and that was great. But I love having a stable of running backs going into a season where you can feel confident about any of them being on the field.
It's a really good point. In this day and age in football, you have to have different skill sets at the running back position. I think Star Thomas more fits that scat back role. He'll be more of the third down back, and Deshaun Bishop will likely be, the first and second down, more of a, not that he's a bruising type. He definitely has speed, but he'll be more of the in between the tackles kind of runner,
Right.
in my opinion. I have to talk about Deshaun Bishop a little bit. Every time I get the opportunity, I love talking about his story. I mean, he's a 3-star from Knoxville, played at Carnes, and was phenomenal at Carnes, by the way. Won Mr. Football, I think, in Tennessee. Like, he was absolutely phenomenal at Carnes. And kind of rolling into your point that you just made, Dakota, dude, he was not expected to play last year. Like,
No.
for one, he was coming off injury. He got injured his true freshman year. And then he had 2 4-stars in front of him in Cam Seldon and Peyton Lewis. And like you said, Peyton has been slightly disappointing, but he'll be a factor this year as well. But for a 3-star who's coming off injury, who's like has less time in the system than the other guys, to come in and basically be RB2 behind Dylan Sampson is incredible, dude. I mean, that's an incredible story. Rooting for Deshaun Bishop. Plus, my cousin has him on Snapchat, so I might try to have to get Deshaun on the show at some point. But anyway, I agree, dude. I think at this point, from what I've seen from camp, what people are saying, it looks like Deshaun Bishop is RB1. Chat will have to let us know what y'all think, who you think will be RB1. But at the end of the day, kind of like we're saying, it's going to be a stable of guys. That's just how football is these days, man.
Yeah, and I agree. I think you're very much right on the Star being the scat guy, which I think is needed. And Dylan Simpson, there's kind of been a history a little bit under hype of like not utilizing some backs as much as I think we should out of the backfield, because Sampson was great out in space. Like our intro really to him was the Virginia game in 23. In Nashville, where I think he had like 3 receiving touchdowns in that game or something, and then it just seemed like we didn't really like throw him the ball in 24. So I think having a guy like Star to do that, it's always nice to have a guy you can bring in on third down with a versatile skill set. But I completely agree. I think it's Deshaun's job right now, in my opinion. And then Star can be more of that third down, and then Peyton is a little bit more of a bruiser. He's a big dude. But I think all 3 of them will get their fair share of touches. And to be honest, early on in the season, I think they'll use that as a way to find out what kind of load they do want to put on each guy. Between our first couple games with Syracuse, and then the lower level competition is always a good opportunity. Not Syracuse, but after that to see what you've got in your guys.
Exactly.
So I think they'll use that, and then because it changed over time as well because Deshaun started to play a little bit more into the season, and that could also change, right? Because if you do start running him 25 times a game, you probably later the season he's gonna have that wear and tear on him to start putting those other guys in there. So, but you have
Yeah.
them to do it, which is a luxury, to be honest.
Exactly. And we're not going to do like a full position breakdown right now. We will be on our August 24th season preview show. Would really love y'all to join us for that show. It's going to be a big one. Dakota's going to be on here. Blake's going to be on here. We'll go position by position, full breakdown of the 2025 Tennessee football season. But when we do that show, the running backs are going to be a position to me that I feel really good about just because of the depth there, the experience that we have there. And it's going to be tough because like Chad's talking about Dylan Sampson and how legendary Dylan Sampson's year was last year. No question about that. Somebody brought up in the chat, let me see here. Vols all day brought up how 2024 DSamp and defense was the reason we got to the playoffs and not Nico. We've been saying that all offseason, man. It's 100% true. There's no question about that whatsoever. So it's going to be tough to replace Dylan Sampson, but if we can do it in the aggregate with three different guys, then I think the running game will be okay. Moving on here with camp stories, I want to talk tackles a little bit, offensive tackles. We brought up Lance Hurd quote, his quote earlier was interesting. Seems like he's a big fan of free food, which I don't blame him. I am too. But all the reports are saying Lance Hurd's in better shape, which is great. Because he was not good last year. We're not going to sugarcoat that. We've said that all last season. He was not a good football player last year. That's just the bottom line. But what I'm mostly excited about is David Sanders has gained 38 pounds since being in camp, dude. Me and you had conversations off camera how we're concerned starting a true freshman tackle, mostly because he came to campus weighing 270. Well, now he's well over 300, all within a training camp. He's got that 5-star pedigree. So now I'm pretty excited about David Sanders and his future.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Because my biggest quarrel, never questioned his talent or what he can do on a football field, but he was small, which makes sense for, a high school tackle. You don't have to be that big. You still see guys coming out of high school that are 280, 290, even 300. But him beefing up like that, and there's also a good amount of muscle under that. It's not just him eating a bunch of McDonald's and
he
Cookout.
Looks good. If you look at the pics from camp, he looks like it's good weight, dude.
Yeah.
Like
and that is
saying it's protein shakes.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's doing that 600 grams of protein a day. Yeah, I'm excited about him because last year the tackles were supposed to be a strong point going into the season, and they ended up being one of the biggest liabilities on the entire team. And you and I have talked about this, and we talked about it on the show like much earlier on. But one of the issues I think caused that was flipping them. Like Lance Hurd played right tackle at LSU, and John Campbell had played left tackle the year before.
Correct.
And it's on paper it's like an easy idea to switch sides, but it is different. And left tackle isn't inherently more valuable like we've been told to think, because the defense controls where they line up their pass rushers, so they're probably going to put their best pass rusher on your right tackle then. So it's still. And David Sanders is on the same boat, right? Because he was starting left tackle in high school. So now you move him to right. And I wish you would just flip them. And it's tough to ask a true freshman to start at left tackle. But that is my biggest concern with Lance Hurd still is hopefully he takes a step forward. Hopefully he puts in the effort. Because I think that was the thing we could all agree was the worst is when you watched him, if you took the time to watch him on a play, the effort level was pathetic. Like it just wasn't there, and that's inexcusable. So at the very least, if he has the physicality and athleticism,
he was also a 5-star. He was a number one recruit in his class.
Yes,
I mean Lance Hurd has the tools, and I think it was partly injury, it was partly just not being in shape, and then like you said, partly effort. And I think he'll be better. I think he'll be better because he can't get much worse. Like he has to be better, right? And I'm very excited about David Sanders. I will say, not to put a wet blanket on David Sanders, but it's extremely tough for an SEC true freshman tackle to hit the ground running. So I'd say let's give him a grace period. We have to let him have his growing pains, dude. As a fan base and the coaching staff has to let David Sanders have his growing pains because it takes development at that position. I'm going to catch up on chat a little bit here. Rick says Jake likes to throw it into the ground. Jake Dirt Slinger. That's a funny nickname. Let's hope that's not the case come game day. But Rick's always coming in here with zingers, so always appreciate Rick in the chat. And then Ty and VFL are talking about David Sanders and his size. I agree. He does look like a pro athlete. I mean, that's how you get that 5-star rating, right? That's those 5-star ratings. What they're basically saying, there's only about 32 in a class because they're projecting first round picks, Dakota. That's what a 5-star rating is. They're projecting who in high school can go on to be a first round pick. And that, so you have to have the size and the athleticism, and David Sanders absolutely has that. Ty also brings up Wendell Moe and his incredible PFF grade. Dude, we were absolutely thrilled about the Wendell Moe pickup. But and again, on August 24th, when we get into our full season preview, we will definitely talk about Wendell Moe more in depth and that PFF grade, because dude, he was phenomenal and he's an incredible pickup. He's a plug and play guy. Really, dude, this is kind of getting on a tangent here, but the portal, that's what the portal should be, Dakota. The portal, you shouldn't build through the portal, but you, just like in free agency in the NFL, dude, you can plug holes in the portal. Okay, we need a starting guard. Go out and get a guy like Wendell Moe who will come in and immediately give you great play.
Yeah, it's very, honestly, it's comparable to the NFL where like you don't want to have to draft for need. And I think that's similar with recruiting, right? Like the portal is now free agency. You want to fill your holes during that and then allow recruiting to just build the depth in the team rather than relying on recruiting to fill the holes in your roster. And that, yeah, love the shout out for the PFF, grade 2.
Oh yeah, we love it.
Reference
we love
that all
PFF
the time.
Data.
Yeah, love that. So yeah, and Wendell, yeah, he had an insanely good, specifically pass blocking grade.
Yep.
So which we need. That was a problem last year. Running wise, we were okay, but my gosh, the pass blocking was abysmal. So definitely glad to have him in there as well.
Yeah, man. And yeah, we've talked about a lot through camp, and some people are shouting out like players like Jordan Ross, like Vols all day shouted out Jordan Ross. And again, August 24th, mark it on your calendar. We'll be live at 11:30 a.m. It is a little bit earlier on a Sunday. So if you're in church or whatever, you can always go back and rewatch the live show, the live recording. And we totally understand that, people being in church and stuff and not being able to watch when we're live for that show, but it's going to be a huge show. So you might get out of church and 2 hours after church, we're still live. It's going to be a huge show, that August 24th show. We're going to go, again, position group by position group. And defensive line is definitely one that we're going to spend a lot of time on talking or spend a lot of time discussing. So, so the last thing I'll talk about is this report today from Adam Sparks. He says Mike Matthews is at practice but not going through wide receiver drills, likely due to being a little banged up. And Chris Brazzell still limited due to injury. And he says you can literally count Tennessee's healthy scholarship wide receivers 5 on one hand, and 4 of those 5 have never played a college snap. I've got some thoughts on this. This is the last thing I think out of camp that we'll discuss, Dakota. It is slightly concerning. I mean, the receiving group has not been good. I think Vols fans will agree with us in the chat here. It has not been good the last couple of seasons. It's just like a lot of it was because of injury. We've been banged up the last couple of years, which has been unlucky, but generally there hasn't been a difference maker in that room. One, are you concerned about this report from Adam Sparks? And 2, are you specifically concerned by Mike Matthews? Because Mike Matthews is a guy, 5-star pedigree, right? Came out as a 5-star, has the size, has the speed, but he got limited time last year. But overall, to me, I'm starting to get a little concerned, and that he won't live up to that 5-star potential.
Yeah, I think that they're not too serious based on everything being said, and Heupel's usually pretty good about kind of not letting that news get out. So there's been nothing disclosed in terms of what the injuries are. I suspect that they're not serious because of that. But I am a little bit. I was a huge Mike Matthews fan last year, and every time he came in, I felt pretty excited. He seemed to make plays. So I was like, why are we not playing this guy more? So I'm still excited about what he can bring, and with what he was coming out of high school. That one little rep, not coming back to the ball on that one, which was not a great throw, not the best sign, but I am a little bit worried about the depth because that is a huge issue. All it takes, we're in camp right now, so it's fine. But all it takes is like one or two nagging injuries for 1 week. If we're going into the Georgia game and if, early on in the season and we don't have two of these guys, that could play a massive role and be the difference in that game. It also means that Boo Carter will probably get his wish of getting to play offense a little bit more because
Yes.
we don't have the depth. And if we have injuries, he's probably going to get called upon sooner rather than later. But yeah, it seems like, hopefully it's nothing serious and hopefully it doesn't become a consistent nagging thing throughout the season. But it does seem like we may see these true freshmen, like Travis Smith and them a little bit sooner rather than.
Yeah, and I am excited about their potential in particular. I kind of agree with Vols all day though here. Matthews, this is it for him. Put up or shut up in 2025. The only reason I say that is because of what we just saw a season ago and what we see from receivers in general, dude. Whether they're going into the NFL or they're true freshmen in college, like Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams last year, or even Brandon Staley for us, he started to make plays at the end of last season. Like true freshman wide receivers can make plays right off the gate and right off the bat. And a second year in the system, if Mike Matthews doesn't take a big step this year, I will start to get a little bit concerned. To talk about Rick in the chat or his comment in the chat, is there any truth to the chatter about Jesse Perry at right guard replacing Satterwhite at center and with Sam Pendleton? I'm not sure about that. Right now I'm looking at our lads and Perry's buried on the depth chart. It is going to be interesting to see how the interior in particular comes together because there are like outside of Wendell Moe, it's kind of like a question mark as far as the interior is concerned. But yeah, man, any thoughts on any of that before we move on here?
No, I mean, back on the receiver front, I do kind of agree with that as well. With the expectation that Mike Matthews had and the situation where you see Ryan Williams and Jeremiah both break out immediately as freshmen, we got to see something. Like this season, Mike Matthews has to solidify himself receiver, or we will probably be seeing these young guys start to get more reps going in the next year. And I hope he can because he's got the size for it. He's got the athleticism for it. But yeah, we'll see. And I do like the freshmen we have, and mentioned in chat with Travis Smith's size coming out as a true freshman right now. So we'll see. And yeah, the interior of the offensive line is going to be interesting because we are replacing pretty much the whole thing. So that is kind of a question mark. The offensive line in general, right? Because we're basically kind of already saying Lance Hurd will be better and David Sanders will be better than John Campbell. But if they're not, plus the interior isn't great, the offensive line could potentially be a massive problem this year again.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's like it has a very high ceiling once again, but it is a question mark. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for fall camp updates, unless you have anything else, Dakota. We discussed a lot there, and again on the season, the full season preview, we'll get into all of it, and we'll continue to cover it even before the season preview. So on August 24th. But let's move on. I think chat will like this discussion. The betting lines, some of the betting lines have come out for next year's games, or for 2025 game. I mean, not next year. We're a month away here, less than a month away. So some of these betting lines have come out, and I thought some of these were interesting, kind of in both ways, in both directions. So I'll kind of just shout out some of the early betting lines here for I would say for the biggest games on our schedule. Game 1 against Syracuse. Right now, I'll use DraftKings, I'll shout them all out. DraftKings has us at minus 13.5 against Syracuse opening week. FanDuel has 14.5. And then Georgia, remember we have Georgia at home this year in week 4. It's like very early on in the season. They have Georgia minus 7.5. And for those that aren't familiar with betting lines, minus 7.5 basically just means they are favored to win by 7.5. And plus 7.5 means you're the underdog. So Georgia minus 7.5. And then Alabama, DraftKings has that at minus 12.5 for Bama. And that game is on the road. And then Florida is favored by 4, -4 for Florida. And that's also on the road. To me, the number one thing that stands out with these betting lines, which again, Bama 12.5 favorites against us. That's a big number for Ty Simpson led Alabama, dude. It just is. I mean, let's not forget Joe Milton went down to Tuscaloosa and we were up 20-6 in that football game, Dakota. We had a huge halftime lead. And yes, did we blow it? That sucks. It does. But we were still winning in that game. And then obviously coming off the win against Alabama last year after not scoring a single point, thanks to Nico in the first half. And so it's like we've been extremely competitive with Alabama. Plus, in my opinion, just from the outside looking in on their roster, it seems like this Alabama roster isn't what the Nick Saban Alabama rosters were.
Yeah, it's definitely still a good roster in college football, but not like it was under Nick Saban. And even last year, they had a really good roster last year, and we saw how that worked out, right? They lose to Vanderbilt, they get blown out by Oklahoma. I think that's a bit steep as well. I think, we haven't won there in a very long time, but to your point, the last time we were there with Milton, we had that game in control in the first half and then kind of collapsed in the second half. But I am surprised by that. It tells me that Vegas is just leaning into Alabama, and kind of ignored, to be honest, how DeBoer did as a coach last year,
which wasn't great.
No, because like the losses were pretty astonishing for Alabama standards, and that was in his first season. So I'm surprised that it's that high. Because it's basically saying they think they're a 9.5-point favorite on a neutral field, which is wild to me.
That's wild, dude. I mean, before Nico left, our win total was the exact same. Actually, it was above Alabama for like a month or so before Nico left, and our win total is still at 8.5. Theirs is at 9.5. I think the Alabama spread's really, really bad. I think they're getting that one wrong, and I'm not even trying to be biased. I think that's wrong. I do. I think that's incorrect, especially because I think we'll be healthy at that point. I think McCoy will be back. Our secondary should still be really good this year. I just think the Bama spread's bad. Balls all day is asking about the Razorback spread in Neyland. They do not have the Razorback spread out yet. Like they only put out a certain amount of early lines. We'll get that information as it comes in, and we'll obviously be discussing it. I mean, when we get to the season, for the new viewers that are new here to the Vol Talk podcast, we'll be doing game reviews and previews every single week. We'll have on Sundays, we'll be doing game reviews, and on I think Tuesdays or Wednesdays, we don't know yet, we'll be doing game previews, and that's where we'll be talking about the spread and whatnot. No, and Seven, I'm not exactly sure how to say your name, but Tennessee's record on the road is not the best, and you play Alabama on the road. Sure. Listen, that it's a fair point, and we'll kind of get into that when we get into this playoff discussion. We'll have a little bit at the end of the show, but we haven't beat Bama since 2003 on the road, and I'm not even saying beat. Remember, we're talking about spread here, right, Dakota? We're not talking about head like we think we're going to win the game. We're talking about they have to win by 13 points to cover this spread that DraftKings has set. And they have to, and I think, they have to win by 14 to cover the spread. Or no, excuse me, I was reading that wrong. They have to win by 12 to cover a FanDuel spread. But still, that's basically 2 touchdowns. And that seems like a lot, in my opinion. And then the other ones I found interesting, for one, I thought minus 14.5 for us in favor of the Syracuse game. That's a little bit interesting to me, dude. Like Syracuse was a pretty good team last year. Now they lost a ton of their talent. They lost their starting quarterback, and some other guys in the draft. But I mean, dude, I think if we came out and beat Syracuse week 1 by 2 touchdowns, I would be pretty thrilled by that.
Yeah, I would as well. I was a little surprised on how high that one was. Because they did lose. Kyle McCord came in and made a really big impact for them pretty much immediately and got himself drafted. But yeah, that one seems a little high. But again, if we win by 2 touchdowns to start the season right out of the gate, I think we're all feeling pretty happy about that.
Yeah.
And I saw people pointing out the last time we opened in Atlanta like that was the Georgia Tech game
Ooh,
with the goal line stop on the 2-point conversion,
that
which,
was
hopefully
electric,
it doesn't
dude.
come down to the wire like that. But we've had some insane games opening with like these kickoff games like that because, CPAT, Cordell Patterson's legacy was born immediately
Yep.
in that game against NC State. So, yeah, I think, we should definitely be favored over Syracuse. I do think that's a pretty high line, but it's interesting because it tells me that Vegas really likes Alabama because you're favoring us by 2 touchdowns against Syracuse, so we would say, okay, maybe 10 would make a little bit more sense there. But then you turn around and think we're going to get almost blown out by Alabama on the road. So it
Yeah.
almost tells me more about what they think of Alabama than what they think of us.
Yeah, it's fair. And remember, we don't even have our starting quarterback named yet. So that's all part
True.
of this. So, a couple of great points in the chat. Ty's bringing up how Heupel has 2 problems, basically winning on the road and winning or losing games he shouldn't. And really those 2
Yep.
things are intertwined, right? It's because Heupel has been phenomenal at home in Neyland since 2022. We have lost 1 football game, and that was Georgia in 2023. So he's been incredible at home. It's really been the road woes that we've termed it in the past, right, Dakota? Shout out to the old. That's a shout out back to the Arkansas review last year. But yeah, so it's going to be tough. Listen, it's going to be tough. And again, betting lines, we have to keep this in mind. Betting lines it's a spread, right? It's not winning outright, and that's kind of what we're discussing here. Really the Florida one and the Georgia one I think are very fair. I think those are very sharp lines. Again, we haven't won in the swamp since 2003. Shout out to Blake's guy, the Spaniard in the chat. His guy Casey Clausen beating Alabama and Florida on the road in 2003. Incredible. But yeah, do you have any other thoughts on these lines, dude, and just these early projections going into the season?
I think the Georgia one's a little interesting. To be honest, that it's not higher just from what's happened. I think that Vegas must be a little bit lower on their roster, and I think their quarterback situation specifically with Stockton probably being the guy who looked okay against Notre Dame in that playoff game. But again, it's kind of a fair one. It's like outside of the road stuff, we just haven't beaten Georgia in a very long time, in 8 years now. So that one I think is fair. And then the Florida one is interesting to me, to be honest, that I thought it would be higher. And
Really?
I think that because of the amount of hype Florida's getting.
That's true.
And it looks like Vegas has said, we've seen this before.
Yeah.
We're not buying it. And so that's what gets me a little bit there, is I expect it to be higher just from all that hype, but Vegas disagrees.
And yeah, that's a great point. And to your point earlier about basically your point earlier was they add 3 points to the home team. Typically, just about 3 points are added to the home team because we know as fans of Tennessee and SEC fans in the chat, we know home and road is a real thing in the SEC. It's and I don't care what the advanced analytics say about that stuff. Home and road is a real thing. It just is. I was at the Alabama game last year in Neyland. It's a real thing. So they add about 3 points. That means they think Florida on a neutral field, Dakota, is about a 1-point favorite. It's about a pick 'em on a neutral field. And so they must not be buying into the DJ Lagway hype that we've heard all offseason. Right. And remember, that's again with us without a named starting quarterback. So that is a little bit interesting how they view our roster versus Florida's. It's about a pick 'em. Again, it's about a pick 'em on a neutral field. So yeah, interesting early lines, and these things will change. Like these are not.
Oh yeah.
When we get into the Alabama week, I guarantee, and especially I think the money's already probably moving towards Tennessee's favor on that line.
I would bet.
And again, once we get into our season, our game previews, we'll get into the betting line that week, and we'll kind of have a discussion on that. And then Ty saying how 10-2 wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, I agree. And that kind of leads us perfectly, a perfect segue, Ty, into the playoff discussion we're going to have right now. So, slacking on the overlays here. Sorry, production, hosting, doing it all here on Vol Talk today. But yeah,
one-man show.
No, not definitely not a one-man show. Okay. So can the Vols make the playoffs in 2025? I think we all want to know that question, man, because under Heupel, we have been insanely competitive, right? Got to the playoffs in 2024, and we would have made the playoffs in 2022 if the format was different. So first off, do you think it's possible that the Vols can make the playoffs in 2025? Like, do you think that's in the realm of possibilities? And if so, how do we do it, Dakota?
I definitely think it's within the realm of possibilities, but it's going to require Heupel to do something that a lot of people in chat have pointed out are things he has not done. And that is win on the road in big games, not just beating Kentucky and Vanderbilt on the road, but winning big games on the road and specifically not losing one out of nowhere. Because, like you and I both, when we talked before last season, because of the history of what Heupel had done, we circled that Arkansas game and was like, don't be surprised, guys, if we lose this. Like, that is the type of game Heupel has shown consistently that he lost. And him doing it again does not bode well for this season. Because now it's like the season is much tougher to make the playoffs than last year, just because of who we get at home and who we get on the road. Because losing to Georgia on the road was kind of the one game last year where we were like, that's probably happening, right? But now, with our lack of ability to win on the road, specifically at Bryant Denny and in the Swamp, those are two big games that if you just assumed we lost, there's your two, right? You can go 10-2 is probably going to get you into the playoff every year as an SEC team. So that's really the mark you want to hit. But if we lose both those games, that means you can't choke on the road anywhere. And then you have to beat Georgia, which you also haven't done in 8 years. So I would say it's definitely possible, but it is a lot tougher with the way our schedule works right now, and it should kind of change pretty drastically next year with this kind of cycle ending. But with the home and road games we had, this season is going to be an uphill battle compared to last year's.
You make a ton of really good points. The schedule in particular, like every other year, we just have so much harder schedule, like to your point, Dakota, because you play Bama and Florida on the road, which have been very winnable games for us since Heupel has got here. We've been competitive with those teams since Heupel has got there, or got to Tennessee, has took the job here. We haven't with Georgia. We just have to be honest with that. We haven't been able to get over that hump because how talented Georgia has been under Kirby Smart. So really, it's like it doesn't really matter if we play them at home or not because we typically lose that game. Now, I think if there is a year, it could be this year. Now, it's going to be tough with the QB question marks. We still have a lot of question marks about this team, kind of how the chat was mentioning earlier. But if you can, again, do one thing that we haven't in a very long time, which is beat Georgia or win on the road against Bama or Florida, which again, we have not done since 2003, and we have not beat Georgia since 2016. If you can do one of those things and then take care of everything else, the everything else games is what I'll call it. That's 9 games. Now, I will say one game, the chat's mentioning a couple of games to watch out in that 9-game stretch, but the one game I'll mention is Oklahoma. Oklahoma could be a really good or a really improved roster this year. So that's not a gimme, but it's a game that we'll be favored in. So the 9 games we're favored in, if you can go 9-0 in those games and then just be one of Alabama, Florida, or Georgia, which again, it's a big hump because we haven't done those things on the road or haven't beat Georgia in a very long time, then you're going to make the playoffs. If you go 10-2 in the SEC, you will make the playoffs. But kind of like the chat's pointing out here, and we're all kind of having this discussion together, Heupel hasn't been able to take care of those 9 quote gimme games, which is the SEC. It's never gimme games, but there's always been a year, like not to bring up bad memories, but Arkansas last year. Arkansas last year and South Carolina in 2022, which will always haunt us. And then
I went to that for the fans to know I was there. If anybody else was, we need a support group for it. That was brutal.
It was absolutely no. You're 100% right. It's absolutely. It was brutal for the whole fan base, and we all know it. And it's bad to bring up those memories. I would even throw in 2023 Missouri. Like I think we probably should have won that game. We got throttled. We probably should have won that game. I think we were more talented. We just didn't show up that week. So yes, there's been these baffling road losses under Heupel. And so if he can get over that hump, I will say I think it's the easiest road slate that we've had as far as talent discrepancy between teams in a while, right? Like I believe 7 and again, you'll have to help me with your name. It's maybe Steven. I'm not exactly sure how to say it.
Sven. Probably
yeah,
Sven.
Yeah, Sven. Sven in the chat's bringing up Mississippi State. And listen, we did beat Mississippi State last year, but again, it's these road like Arkansas. We were 14-point
Yeah.
favorites in that game, Dakota. Like I remember covering the game. It's like it, it just comes out of nowhere, man. We were 20, I think we were 20-point favorites against Carolina in 2022. Like it just
Oh yeah.
comes out of nowhere. It's like you just never know when it's going to happen. So you have like we can't just assume he's going to take care of these things. Um, but if he does, like you said, it's very possible the Vols are back in the playoffs because I do think it's I won't say likely. I'm about 50-50 of whether we can win one of those big three games. Like it's gonna be big question marks. And by the time the Syracuse game happens, and especially by the time the Georgia game happens in week 4, we'll know so much more about this football team, man. And that's when
Oh
we'll
yeah.
have a really good sense. But just real quick, Dakota, before I get your thoughts on all that, I'm going to just quickly catch up on the chat here as best I can. We have Ty predicting 9-3. I think 9-3 is very realistic. I'll just shut out right now. Our win total placed by we're set by Vegas on the year is 8.5. So 9-3 is basically just you saying we're going over 8.5, which is again Vegas. Vegas. There is absolutely no bias in it whatsoever. Right? It is simply them setting the line what they think Tennessee's win total is going to be on the year, and I think 9-3 or 8-4. Again, it's one game over or under that line. It's very realistic predictions from the chat here, and that's honestly most of the chat here, right? We're thinking 8-4, 9-3. Also, Daniel in the chat saying college football 26 is trash. I can't argue with that. But yeah, Dakota, what do you think on all that and the predictions that we're getting here from the chat?
Yeah, I think one thing that you mentioned early in that was the Oklahoma piece that I think people in chat mentioned because they did get John Mateer from State, who like led the country in rushing last year at quarterback. That is a massive upgrade over Jackson Arnold and Hawkins. So Oklahoma will probably be a better team this year. We had that game handled until we kind of let it slip a little bit and made it closer than it should have been on the road, which, to be honest, has probably been one of the most impressive games by Heupel, was going into Oklahoma and kind of just smacking them until we let it look close at the end because the offense kind of got complacent, which was on him. Yeah, definitely not overlooking that game. It's just, historically, just like Alabama and everybody, like we kind of have this knack. Like if it's not Alabama, Georgia, and even, Florida now lately, we beat at home consistently. Like we win those games. So it's easier to kind of pencil that in as a win. But definitely one that'll be one of our tougher games. The Mississippi State game, I don't like, just like last year, Mississippi State's worse. For the record, they are worse than what Arkansas was last year for sure. But I think a lot of fans that probably didn't buy into the idea Heupel lost those probably did not worry about that game much on the schedule. And then boom, it hit like a freight truck. We couldn't celebrate Vandy beating Alabama that week very much because we had to deal with our own embarrassing loss. So Mississippi State is still concerning to me just because, and honestly, Ty's prediction would be the most heartbreaking as well. Can you imagine if we go 9-3 and we beat 2 out of Georgia, Florida, Bama. We pull out those wins, and then we lose to like Mississippi State on the road, and that's why we don't make the playoff. It would be excruciating, but also not that surprising, to be honest. So I think, yeah, I'm the pessimist in me a little bit is the type to say like I don't want to bet on something until you show me it can happen, and that's kind of where I'm at with Heupel this season. It's like show me you can win on the road in big games and show me that you don't lose when you shouldn't. Because the great elite coaches in college football never do that. Kirby and Nick Saban and even Dabo, like they don't lose those. Dabo maybe a little bit more, but you don't lose those games. And if you do, it's not often. But it's an every season thing right now for us. So my thing for Heupel this season is we make the playoffs if he proves he can do those two things.
Yeah, all really good points. I am going to quickly catch up on the chat a little bit. Wild Turkey shouting out the LSU win on the road. Absolutely. That's one of my favorite games from 2022 is beating LSU in Death Valley. Because, dude, when I grew up, it like one of the first things I learned about college football was, the big bad Death Valley. And then we went in there and absolutely whipped them. And literally my favorite clip maybe ever, like in the history of the planet, is Vols fans after the 2022 LSU victory singing Rocky Top and Death Valley just because of what that means and kind of the turning point in the program a little bit. So that's a great point, Wild Turkey. The thing is, it's usually just one bad road loss a year, which is always it's always critical. That's the problem. It's like it's always okay. South Carolina prevents us from making the 4-team playoff, and then Arkansas prevented us. Remember, if we beat Arkansas last year, we would have been in the SEC championship game and would have had a chance to play for a top 4 seed. It's like it's Heupel has big road wins. 2022 LSU,
Yeah.
last year against Oklahoma. He has them under his belt. It's usually just one that we're a big favorite in. Like we have there's a talent gap. There was a talent gap between 2024 Tennessee versus 2024 Arkansas. It just was. Like if you play that game 100 times, it probably only go Arkansas's way like 20 times out of that 100 game sample. So point being, it's usually just one crippling, baffling road loss per season. That's the issue. And you're right, Dakota. It could be the reason we don't make the playoffs this year, and which would be absolutely devastating if you win one of Bama, Florida, or Georgia, and then you drop Mississippi State, and then that's the reason you don't make it. That would suck. That would suck. To put it mildly.
It would be brutal, and it would be the very Tennessee thing to do. Unfortunately, as we all know, it would just feel very on brand lately. But Wild Turkey brings a very good point. Like, specify in terms of winning big road games. He has done that. I would say, and it's beyond a Heupel problem, is more so beating Georgia, Florida, and Alabama on the road, because that is something we just have not done in over a decade for all of them. So, yeah, or since 2016, so close to it. But those are the three where it's like you have to prove you can do that. And to be honest, if you're going to be the long-term coach and be able to bring success to this program consistently, you have to learn how to win there. Like, It's just part of the job, is being able to go into Tuscaloosa and Gainesville
it's part of it, man.
and Athens and win. So we'll see. The work's cut out for him this year. And, with a lot of the QB questions and stuff, like it'll be very interesting to see how things play out. And I think the schedule is also different this year, which is worth noting. We played Georgia much earlier and Florida much later. So it's going to be a different feel. And to be honest, could go our favor, because in terms of talking playoff, right? Like we talked about this a lot last year. When you lose matters a lot. And if you reordered with us, Ole Miss, and with Alabama, like reordering when those losses happen determines where you land. So like Florida being at the end of the year makes it tough. But like if we do lose to Georgia early on, and then we beat, that gives us time to recover from that loss. Whereas if it was at the end of the year and we lost, so that's something that does matter. And that makes that Florida game all the more important, especially what our record is going into that game specifically. It is probably the season deciding game at the end of the day.
That means my heart will be beating through my chest. That's a fantastic point, Dakota, because we've, just as general college football fans, we've made that point in the past with picking playoff teams and seeds. When you lose matters, dude. When you lose matters. And should it matter? Part of me says yes, because it's like you want the best teams are playing their best ball later in the year. So going down to, listen, the Bama rivalry is our biggest rivalry. Blake taught me that a long time ago. But when I grew up, it was Florida. I hate Florida, dude. I can't stand Florida. We welcome Florida fans in the chat if you want to stop by. But I hate Florida, dude. I just do, and I want to beat them down so bad. So if they're the reason we got into the playoffs, that would be absolutely incredible. Again, catching up on the chat. Thank you all so much for the support on this video. It's been unbelievable. Just the channel in general, the support we've gotten has been really, really unbelievable. John in the chat, new chatter here, I'll shout you out. The players have to be confident to do that. Don't know exactly what you're referring to, but I agree. Confidence is huge. Blake brings that up all the time. Wild Turkey, a man after Blake's heart. He says, put Casey Clausen in at the Swamp. Absolutely correct about that. We have for the new listeners, and to again plug the August 24th at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, the preview show, or the season preview show. On Vol Talk, we have what's the Vol Talk Awards that we like to give out at the end of the year. and we'll kind of discuss like guys we're watching for those. One of our awards is the Casey Clausen Award, which is given to basically the underappreciated player that deserves more love. And Casey Clausen's absolutely that, especially younger Vols fans don't realize what he did here. Go look into the 2003 Vols, man. Very interesting team, a team that beat Bama and Florida on the road. So, and that was led by Casey Clausen. So, but yeah, I mean, just some overall great chatters in the chat here, and let us know if you think we're going to make the playoffs. A lot of people drop their predictions. 9-3, 9-3 is one of those records that you probably don't get in, right? Especially if you lose to Florida like late in the year, you probably don't get in at 9-3. But then again, it's like depending on how the season goes, there were several 9-3 SEC teams that were kind of fighting for playoff positioning at the end of the last season. None of them ended up making it, which thank God Alabama did not deserve to be in the playoffs last year after losing 21 on the road against Oklahoma. For some reason, the media just act like that game didn't happen. We saw it.
Didn't
The
urge
game.
it.
Yeah, just didn't watch it. And that kind of goes back to your point about old DeBozo earlier and his coaching job last year. But anyways, just taking shots at Alabama here.
Classic.
The chat. Oh, also have to shout out our boy Nate V in the chat. Obviously friends in real life and getting in the chat here. So really appreciate Nate V. And then we got Franklin Fanatic in the chat too, has been talking some Penn State, which is interesting. Said he won 4 straight national championships with Penn State on the game. That might be the only place you're going to be winning 4 straight national championships with Penn State on. But anyway, but yeah, it's been a fun discussion, man. Do you have any other thoughts on the playoffs here or the 2025 Vols in general while we're here with chat?
Yeah, not a ton. Yeah, I just want to shout out Sven with the Mississippi State fan being in chat because I've never had a reason to not like Mississippi State. And as you'll probably touch on here in a second with other things you and I do, I've been a Dak fan. So I mean, unless you hate him now as a Cowboy, but been a Dak fan and loved Mike Leach. So have no hard feelings towards Mississippi State and the Bulldogs at all.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't know he was a Mississippi State fan. It's hard. Again, it's hard to keep up with chat here.
Yeah.
But dude, we welcome all fans. Listen, if you're just wanting to hear some college ball talk, here we are. Now we love the Vols, and it's the focus is going to be the Vols. But yeah, we welcome all.
Yeah, I mean, this season in general, obviously, when I hop on for the preview, we'll go a little bit more in depth. But I think we kind of covered the key pieces from the playoff perspective on what it takes to get there. And we know what Heupel has to do. And it's a matter of him doing that, and proving he can win those big games against Alabama, Georgia. And it will be, I think one of the more fascinating things this season will be the reordering of Georgia and Florida in terms of when we play them. And that game, yeah, because we and I are in the same boat. And I think it may be an age thing. I saw Ty, I don't know how old he is, but like saying that Florida is also the team he hates the most. And growing up, it was. It's funny because I never saw him beat them. We didn't watch us beat Florida until 2016, which I got to be on the field for that game, which was such a cool thing. But like, I hate Florida. So if we're going into that game and we're sitting at 8-2 or whatever, and it's like we win this and we just got to take care of Annie, we're in. That is going to be an insane environment in Gainesville. So
it is, dude. It is. And just one last thing to add to the playoffs. BetMGM does have us at plus 225 to make the playoffs, which I mean that's not that bad. I mean it's not a coin flip, but it's just about a coin flip, right? So I will say again one last time. There's no bias in that. It's not a Negavol saying, "Oh, we're going 6-6 or 5-7." We lost Nico, blah blah blah. All this, and which again, that's in the realm of possibility. But it's like there's not a Negavol making that line, and there's not a super optimistic Vol fan saying, "Oh, we're going to be in the playoff every year. We're going 12-0." That's just what Vegas thinks. It's plus 225 to make the playoffs. So it's 100% a possibility, right? I mean, our win total on the year before Nico left was 9.5. It went down to 8.5, which again, I'm convinced at this point that the ceiling of this offense is going to be raised without Nico. So that excites me, man. Like Vegas thinks we have a good roster. And if you look at the blue chip percentage and things like that, we're starting to get in that realm of, okay, we're starting to get loaded with 4s and 5 stars. Now, some of those guys need to break out. That's part of this. And again, like you just mentioned, Dakota, we'll get into that more in depth on the season preview. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Again, the chat is still popping, so I feel obligated to keep this show going. But I appreciate you guys watching. Again, the support has been unbelievable. And thank you for welcoming Dakota in. Again, Dakota's been a guest on the show in the past, but the show has gotten a little bit bigger since he's been on. So we really appreciate you guys. Welcome him in, and he'll be on the season preview. I'll shout it out one more time. August 24th, we will be live for a full season preview. That show might be 3 hours. We don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows how long that show is going to go for? But it's going to be an absolutely huge show. And if while you're here, if you could please like the video, helps the video out, and subscribe to the channel. I think we picked up like 8 new subscribers on the live stream. It's been an awesome stream, guys, and you know we love this, right? We just want to talk ball with Vols fans in the chat. Everyone's excited for the season. We are too. So thank you all for watching, and thank you all for joining us on this ball talk. And yeah, we'll catch y'all next time.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate having me on.
Yep. And GBO. I almost forgot my GBO. GBO.